Okay, so we have been reading the amazing, fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl, and I hope you've all been enjoying it. I think it was Miss Gemma who read last time, and she read up to chapter 7. So we're going to start on chapter 7, which is called We'll Never Let Him Go. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Bean switched off the motor of his tractor and climbed down from the driver's seat. Buns did the same. Both men had had enough. They were tired and stiff from driving the tractors all day. They were also hungry. Slowly they walked over to the small foxhole in the bottom of the huge crater. Bean's face was purple with rage. Buns was cursing the fox with dirty words that cannot be printed. Boggis came waddling up. Dang and blast that filthy, stinking fox, he said. What the heck do we do now? I'll tell you what we don't do, Bean said. We don't let him go. We'll never let him go, Bunch declared. Never, 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 cried Boggis. Did you hear that, Mr. Fox? Yelled Bean, bending low and shouting down the hole. It's not over yet, Mr. Fox. We're not going home till we've strung you up as dead as a dingbat. Whereupon the three men all shook hands with one another and swore a solemn oath that they would not go back to their farms until the fox was caught. So a solemn oath is like a really serious promise that you promise to do and make sure happens. So they're all promising very seriously that they wouldn't go back to their farm until the fox was caught. They've got a picture here, if you can see it, of them with their spades and digging up the ground. So what's the next move? Asked Buns, the pot-bellied dwarf. We're sending you down the hole to fetch him up, said Bean. Down you go, you miserable midget. Not me, screamed Buns, running away. Bean made a sickly smile. When he smiled, you saw his scarlet gums. You saw more gums than teeth. Then there's only one thing to do, he said. We starve him out. We camp here all day and night watching the hole. He'll come out in the end, he'll have to. So Boggis and Buns and Bean sent messages down to their farms asking for tents, sleeping bags and supper. That evening, 3 tents were put up in the crater on the hill, one for Boggis, one for Buns and one for Bean. The tents surrounded Mr. Fox's hole, and the 3 farmers sat outside their tents eating their supper. Boggis had 3 boiled chickens smothered in dumplings. Buns had 6 doughnuts filled with disgusting goose liver paste. Ooh. And Bean had 2 gallons of cider. All 3 of them kept their guns beside them. Boggis picked up a steaming chicken and held it close to the fox's hole. Can you smell this, Mr. Fox? He shouted. Lovely tender chicken. Why don't you come up and get it? The rich scent of chicken wafted down the tunnel to where the foxes were crouching. Oh, Dad, said one of the small foxes, couldn't we just sneak up and snatch it out of his hand? Don't you dare, said Mrs. Fox. That's just what they want you to do. But we're so hungry, they cried. How long will it be till we get something to eat? Their mother didn't answer them, nor did their father. There was no answer to give. As darkness fell, Buns and Bean switched on the powerful headlamps of the 2 tractors and shone them onto the hole. Now, said Bean, we'll take it in turn to watch. One watches while 2 sleep, and so on throughout the night. Boggis said, what if the fox digs a hole right through the hill and comes out the other side? You didn't think of that one, did you? Of course I did, said Bean, pretending he had. Go on then, tell us the answer, said Boggis. Bean picked something small and black out of his ear, and flicked it away. How many men have you got working on your farm? He asked. 35, Boggis said. I've got 36, Bun said. And I've got 37, Bean said. That makes 108 men altogether. We must order them to surround the hill. Each man will have a gun and a flashlight. There will be no escape then for Mr. Fox. So the order went down to the farms, and that night 108 men formed a tight ring around the bottom of the hill. They were armed with sticks and guns and hatchets and pistols and all sorts of other horrible weapons. This made it impossible for a fox, or indeed for any animal, to escape from the hill. The next day the watching and waiting went on. Boggis and Bunt and Bean sat upon small stools, staring at the fox's hole. They didn't talk much, they were just sat there with the guns on their laps. Every so often Mr. Fox would creep a little closer towards the mouth of the tunnel and take a sniff. Then he would creep back again and say, "They're still there." "Are you sure?" Mrs. Fox would ask. "Positive," said Mr. Fox. "I can smell Bean a mile away. He stinks." I've got a picture here of the tractors with their headlights on at night, focusing on the hole so the foxes can't get out. For 3 whole days and 3 whole nights this waiting game went on. "How long can a fox go without food or water?" Boggis asked on the 3rd day. "Not much longer now," Bean told him. "He'll make a run for it soon. He'll have to." Bean was right. Down in the tunnel the foxes were slowly but surely starving to death. "If only we could just have a tiny sip of water," said one of the small foxes. "Oh, Dad, can't we do something? Couldn't we just make a dash for it, Dad? We'd have a little bit of a chance, wouldn't we?" "No chance at all," snapped Mrs. Fox. "I refuse to let you go up there and face those guns. I'd sooner you stay down here and die in peace." Mr. Fox had not spoken in a long time. He had been sitting quite still, his eyes closed, not even hearing what the others were saying. Mrs. Fox knew that he was desperately trying to think of a way out, and now, as she looked at him, she saw him stir himself and get slowly to his feet. He looked back at his wife. There was a little spark of excitement dancing in his eyes. "What is it?" said Mrs. Fox quickly. "I've just had a bit of an idea," Mr. Fox said. "What?" they cried. "Oh, Dad, what is it?" "Come on, tell us quickly." "Well," said Mr. Fox. Then he stopped and sighed and sadly shook his head. "It's no good. It won't work after all." "Why not, Dad?" "Because it means more digging, and we aren't any of us strong enough after 3 days and nights without food." "Yes, we are, Dad," cried the small foxes, jumping up and down and running to their father. We can do it. You see if we can't." Mr. Fox looked at the 4 small foxes and he smiled. "What fine children I have," he thought. "They were starving to death and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, but they are still undefeated. I must not let them down." I suppose we could give it a try," he said. "Let's go, Dad. Tell us what we have to do." Slowly Mrs. Fox got to her feet. She was suffering more than any of them from the lack of food and water. She was very weak. "I am so sorry," she said, "but I don't think I'm going to be much help." "You stay right where you are, my darling," said Mr. Fox. "We can handle this ourselves." Okay, so that's up to chapter 10. And the next chapter is called Boggis's Chicken House #1. So I'll leave that for Thursday, when our next reading is at 1 o'clock on Thursday. So I wonder what's going to happen next. If they've got a plan, and the next chapter is called Boggis's Chicken House. I wonder if they're going to try and get in a chicken house somewhere and get some food and water. So we have to have our fingers crossed that they successfully get out of the hole and they get some food without being caught. Okay, guys, thank you so much for coming today. I've really enjoyed reading to you. Thank you. Really enjoyed reading to you. It's probably going to be me again on Thursday, but it might be someone else, but I think it's going to be me. Okay, and we'll find out what happens. So we'll have to hold our breath and cross our fingers and toes that the foxes get out safe and sound. All right, so I will see you on Thursday. Take care.